Welcome to the TechHub.training Power BI Peaks Cycles Creating Columns Challenge solution. In this challenge, we are tasked with creating some columns for the Peaks Cycles bike shop in Power BI using DAX, and do this in order to help find some insight about the data. So let's go ahead and jump on in. So when you go ahead and open up Power BI with the data, you can navigate over here on this left side between the report view, table view, model view, and so let's go ahead and jump on into the tables. And the first table we're going to look at is this customer info table, and we were asked to create two columns, the full name column and the area code column. So the first thing we need to do is create a new column. How we do that is up here in the column tools section, there's this new column, and it tells you exactly how to create a new column. You just click on that and it'll start setting up the DAX for you. And so see how this is the column name, and then we write the DAX expression here to say what we want this column to be. And so since we already have our columns, we're just going to take a look at these. So the first column is the full name column, and what this does, it joins the first name and a space and the last name together to arrive at this full name. And there are two ways to join text together. You can use this concatenate function, and the arguments for that, you have the first name and then a comma and then this space right there, and that'll put the first name and then the space, and then we can add the last name. And so concatenate is one way to do that. You can also use this ampersand, which is, in my opinion, a much easier and more efficient way than the concatenate function, but you can do it either way, and so I've shown both right here. And the title of the column is right at the beginning. See, full name, so that's all looking good. Next, creating the area code column. What we're going to do is take a look at the customer's phone numbers and grab the first 3 digits. And so right here, I've got my DAX area code as the column title, and then I use this left function that is also present in Excel, and it's pretty much the exact same as in Excel. You give it your string, which in this case is the phone number, and then you tell it how many characters to grab, and it'll grab the first 3. Well, it'll grab 3 starting on this left side. So starts on the left, and it'll grab the first 3 characters, which, as you can see, 855, 287 there, 287, etc. So that area code column's looking good. Next, we're going to go ahead and jump over to the bike export table. Alright, so the first column we're going to create is the bike profit column. So as you can see here, in this table we've got the bike model, the bike type, the cost of goods sold, so how much it cost us to purchase, and then the retail price, which is how much we sell it for. And with this bike profit column, what we're going to do is calculate our profit on the bike. So we're going to take our retail price that we sold it for and subtract the COGS price that we bought it for. And that'll create this bike profit column, and we can format it right here as a currency with 2 decimal places. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is create this value added column. Now this column might look pretty complicated, but it's actually just a few simple things squished together. And so let's just break it down and go through step by step. So the first thing to notice is we have a couple if statements. So we have this if statement here and this if statement right here. And everything kind of revolves around that because, as you can see, or if you remember from the problem, the 3 values we want to output in this value added column are above average, below average, or loss. And that just kind of gives us some qualitative information about which bikes we maybe want to stop selling, which ones we want to maybe promote more. And so we're going to create this column using these if statements. And so let's go ahead and dive in and just start with the first part. So how an if statement works is you provide a criteria, so in this case that the bike profit column here is less than 0. And then you'll tell it what to output if it's true, and you'll tell it what to output if it's false. So if the bike profit is less than 0, we're going to output loss. So as you can see here, this is negative, and so these will output a loss when that's true. Alright, pretty simple so far. And then if it's false, if the bike profit is not less than 0, then it's going to go ahead and move into this other if statement. And this if statement has two criteria. So the first criteria is that the bike profit greater than 0. So we've already filtered for the less than 0, so we want the greater than 0. And we also want if the bike profit is less than the average bike profit. And the way we can find the average is super simple. As you can see here, we just average whatever column and it'll plug in right there. So if we have our bike profit, and if it's less than the average and it's greater than 0, then it'll satisfy both of these criteria. We'll move on to the output if it's true, which is below average, because it's below average. And if it's false, meaning it's not below average, then it will be above average. And as you can see here, it breaks this column out into the above average, below average, with some losses interspersed in there. So again, I know this looks kind of long and complex, but hope you can see how breaking it down really simplifies it. And the best way to learn how to do this is just to do it. So go ahead and take this knowledge and dive on in and try and figure that out if you haven't already. Okay, so finally we're going to move into the invoice export table, and we're going to create the invoice profit column. So in this table we have the unit price and the total sale value, and this is the price to the customer, and it's the same as the retail price. Okay, so, and what we want to do is find the invoice profit for each invoice, meaning the total revenue less the total expenses, separated by invoice. And we're going to use this cool little function called related. And what that does is it'll allow us to reference data from another table. So notice these are all the invoice export table, but this one is the bike export table, because what we want to find is the cost of goods sold, because that represents our expenses. And how we do that is by using this related function. And we can see how the tables are related if we move over to this model view on this left side. And so the two tables we're looking at are bike export and invoice export. And if you hover over this line, we can see how they're related. This bike ID is the same in both of them. It's a primary key in the bike export table, and it's a foreign key in this invoice export table. So when we are in our invoice profit, what it'll do is it'll reference the bike ID that's the same in the bike export table. For example, in this first invoice, we're selling bike ID 16, unit price of $1,944, and a profit of about $936 after. So let's take a look at this bike export table, and we're going to go ahead and look at bike 16 right here, the Lunar Glide, and 1944 is the retail price, and our cost of goods sold is $1,000 here, and you can see again it's about that $936 for this bike. So that's all looking good. It grabbed the related cost of goods sold using this bike ID. So if we jump back over to our invoice table, to this invoice profit column, there are a few ways to calculate this total profit. And what I did here is I took the total sale value and subtracted out the quantity times the cost. And so what that does is it'll take whatever the cost is. If there are multiple bikes, it'll, let's see, I think when we scroll down, so you got 3 bikes here, And so the cost for these will not be just the cost of goods sold, because that'll just return the value for one bike. Instead, it would be the cost of goods sold times the number of that bike. And this total sale value was already calculated, and that's just this quantity times the price. And so another way you can calculate the invoice profit is by taking the price minus the cost of goods sold and then multiply that by the quantity. Or also in this bike export table, we already have the bike profit column, and so we could just multiply this by the quantity of bikes. So there are a few ways to do that. This is what I chose to go with, this total revenue minus total expenses. So I hope you enjoyed this challenge. I hope you were able to figure it out, maybe struggle with it a little bit, and learn some valuable skills. Be sure to post your challenge solution on the TechHub.training site, and we'll see you next time.